And welcome to my new Let's Play of Sailor Moon. This was released for the Sega Genesis as a tie-in to the first season of the anime. Before we get started, I do want to check the options menu really quickly. Alright, so this isn't the easiest game in the world, so even though there is something special for beating the game on the highest difficulty, I will be sticking with the normal difficulty and also turning the continues up to 7. And with that, we should be ready to go. Since this is based on the first season, we have access to the initial 5 Sailor Senshi, and for this playthrough, I will be playing as Sailor Venus. There are Yoma here. Yes, quite a lot of them. Not for long. Alright, so this is a beat-em-up based on the first season, so we have the Yoma as our main antagonists, and we have a lot of familiar enemies as well from that first season. Overall, I actually think this game is pretty fun, but also surprisingly difficult. I'm not really good at beat-em-ups, so I'm not sure how this compares to other games in the genre, but personally I find this to be surprisingly challenging. I'm probably going to use up at least a couple continues throughout this playthrough. I'm hoping it goes relatively well, but who knows. In terms of the controls, A attacks, B jumps, and C performs a special attack that uses up a little bit of health to perform. There's also a charge-up attack like so, and also aerial attacks with directional input. So, overall, a fairly robust moveset, but Sailor Venus actually has probably one of the more limited movesets. Most of the other characters have multi-hit attacks. Basically, by tapping the A button, you can perform a series of punches and kicks. With Sailor Venus, she only has one attack in her combo, which uses her chain. So even though it is not exactly great for combos, one benefit of this is range. So it basically covers the length of the screen if you're standing towards the center. So this is a great option for keeping enemies far away. Honestly, as someone who struggles with games like this, that's a great option. And also her charge-up move, Crescent Beam, is also really great for keeping enemies away. There are various food items on the ground that restore health, like that can of soda over there. I am going to try to fight these enemies before collecting that, to avoid wasting some of the health refill. The ability to attack enemies off-screen is great. Those enemies in particular can actually be slightly difficult to fight. And also, each stage is divided into several sub-areas, and after defeating, I think, these two enemies, we should be moving on to our next area. We can also break things like this car. It doesn't accomplish anything, though. Alright, so now we are on an elevator. This stage can be a little bit tricky. Basically, my advice would be to try to figure out where you can actually stand to easily hit all of the enemies as they appear and knock them out of the window, like so. So while we're riding up this elevator, this game was actually released for the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom as well, but this is a great place to talk about how they're not exactly the same game. Similar to a lot of tie-in games at that time, the Genesis and Famicom versions were very different, and this level in particular is not in the SNES version. The SNES version actually released a little bit earlier, It's also, I think, a harder game for a lot of reasons, so that's why I picked the Genesis version. Being the later release, I feel like it has more interesting content, and it being easier is definitely a benefit as someone who struggles with games like this. One thing I remember is the max continues is actually 5 instead of 7, and you actually have to play the game on normal to see every stage. There you are, prepare to fight. Huh? Who are you? Allow me to introduce myself. I am Sailor Venus, Senshi of love and justice. Huh? The department stores where normal folk go to unwind. Sailor Moon, make short work of this hideous Yoma. Even though we're not playing a Sailor Moon, Tuxedo Mask will drop off a rose that does restore health. By the way, the boss's health meter has 2 hearts next to it. Those indicate how many life bars they have. Luckily, we can actually easily just repeatedly stunlock this enemy before it gets remotely close to us. But yeah, in the SNES version, if you play on the easiest difficulty, you can only play the first 2 stages. On the Genesis version, you can actually play all of the stages on easy, except you won't get an ending cutscene. It'll cut straight to the credits. So yeah, it's a lot more forgiving, and overall I think just a better game, so that's why I picked this version. But with that, we are basically done with Stage 1. At the end of every stage, you get a rank, so let's see how we did. That is better than I thought, actually. The highest rank is A, and I think the lowest rank is an E. Darn, I came here to have fun, not to fight. Feel the power of my Hyper Golden, Great Dynamic Mega Spark Delicious Turbo Ultra Super Big Special Crescent Beam. That's a mouthful, Minako. Alright, so we are now in an amusement park. Again, if we were playing the SNES version, the stage is very different, for one thing, but also the game would end if we were playing on the easiest difficulty. So yeah. I do find it really fascinating how a lot of games have such big differences. I kind of miss that actually, where each console basically gets a different version of the game. There's also an arcade version that released after this version that's also a different game entirely. So yeah, within a span of a couple years, there are basically 3 separate Sailor Moon games released based on the first anime that were all basically like almost different games. This level is actually kind of annoying because of the trains that pass by. By the way, something I should mention is another reason to play the Genesis version is there's a fan translation for it. So you might have noticed that all the dialogue has been in English. This game was only released in Japan for the Genesis. For the Super Nintendo, it was also released in France of all places, with a French translation, but there is no English fan translation for the SNES version to my knowledge. So if you want to experience this in English, there's also more dialogue in this version as well. That's probably why there isn't a translation for that, because there just isn't that much talking. It would mostly be for the menus, which are actually fairly easy to navigate. Alright, so overall, yeah, I just find this to be the much better version by far. I also think it looks and sounds a lot better, even though a lot of these sounds sound very Genesis. It definitely, I think, has overall better visual and audio quality. Even things like movement speed are better. I tried the SNES version a little bit, and the movement speed was so slow that it was very annoying to play. So yeah, overall, I do think this is the definitive version, though in all fairness, I also have not played the arcade version. That one might be even better, but I actually don't know. I feel like, as someone who struggles with the console versions of these games, the arcade version sounds incredibly daunting, as someone who has heard stories about arcade games being notoriously difficult in order to basically get a lot of money out of people. By the way, speaking of arcade games, this game's development history is really interesting because I have seen a lot of conflicting answers while researching for this series on who actually made this game. So the SNES version is attributed to a branch of Bandai called Angel, but the Genesis version is listed as being published by a company called MABA, which apparently was a publishing collab between Bandai and Mattel. So that's kind of interesting for one thing. By the way, this fan here is very powerful, so make sure to pick that up whenever you see it. It does a lot of damage, like so. But in terms of who actually developed this game, not just published it, apparently, according to a lot of sources that I saw, this game was actually made by Arc System Works, of all companies, the makers of BlazBlue and Guilty Gear. Honestly, that makes me want a new Arc Sys Sailor Moon beat-em-up style game, because I'm pretty sure they also did River City Girls not that long ago, and I would actually really like to see another Sailor Moon game for consoles, because the last non-mobile Sailor Moon game was for the DS of all things, Sailor Moon La Luna Splende, which was a puzzle game only released in Italy. So yeah, Sailor Moon has had a lot of video games, but not many of them are particularly recent. Even with the release of Crystal, they really haven't done much with this series. By the way, this little Sailor Moon icon here will give you an extra life if you pick it up. These clown enemies are very dangerous, but with this fan, they probably won't be too bad. Like so. Otherwise, they tend to be kind of annoying to defeat. And now we are in this dessert area, so let's pick up this next fan and start making our way through more enemies. Beat-em-ups really aren't my thing because I didn't grow up with the genre. It feels like my gaming preferences tend to lean towards basically what I grew up with, which is platformers, either 2D or 3D. So other genres I've had to basically learn about much later, like RPGs even were like a lot later, beat-em-ups, puzzle games. There's a lot of genres that I still like, even though I have no nostalgia for them, but it's just a case of kind of like finding the right one. And for beat-em-ups, it's like, I feel like licensed beat-em-ups are more interesting to me. Like, if there's a really good license attached to it, I feel like I'm more likely to enjoy a game like this. Again, which is kind of why I would like a modern take on something like this. I feel like a good example of that is like Scott Pilgrim, which is like, as a game is not something that entirely seems that exciting to me, but because people like Scott Pilgrim so much, that kind of makes the game seem more interesting to me, even as someone who admittedly has not seen that movie or read that series. By the way, my history with Sailor Moon is I basically watched it after getting into Pokemon and wanting to watch more anime. This was like 2010, 2009, somewhere in there. So I just started watching really popular anime, like Fullmetal Alchemist, and Sailor Moon was one of them. I watched, 100 plus episodes before they got removed from YouTube after a new company got the rights to them. But I really enjoyed it, even though, admittedly, that anime is really rough because there was so much filler. There is a ridiculous amount of filler in Sailor Moon, that makes it kind of a shame that Crystal ended up kind of not taking off, because having a more succinct portrayal would have been really nice, but I have heard that Crystal has a lot of problems, which is kind of a shame. I still need to watch Crystal. I have only seen like 7 episodes. I watched until Sailor Venus got introduced, and then I stopped watching because I was curious about her debut, and then after that I just stopped. Alright, so we actually are getting pretty far into the stage. I'm almost wondering if the boss is after here, or if it's after the next wall. I can't remember. Another Sailor Senshi? No matter, you're just a teenage girl. You pose no threat to me? Is that so? You know what they say. Even a kappa swims in the river. I think that's even a kappa fords the river. Right? That doesn't sound right either. The saying is, even a kappa can drown. Well, whatever, let's fight. Who are you? Farewell, O lonely wanderer who destroys the dreams of lovely maidens. Yep, Tuxedo Mask is about as helpful in this game as he is in the anime. He kind of shows up, says a few lines, and then leaves. But hey, in this case, at least he gives us a healing item. Anyway, this is Jadeite, I'm pretty sure. He's not a particularly tough boss, especially with this fan. Yeah, I really like Sailor Moon. I admit it has a lot of issues. I feel like the manga's pretty good though. I still actually need to finish the manga. I'm only halfway through, by the way. And we got an A for that. I am doing better in this playthrough than I actually expected. But I think we are going to stop there for now. So, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for more Sailor Moon.